God's against us. Faithfulness is the word.
My religion compels me, and I love it for it, to be against discrimination of any kind in our country.
Our rights come from nature and God, not from government.
All God asks of you is faithfulness.
35 years of fighting for the family, standing for the church, laboring to return to a moral and biblically based culture.
This is the American Family Association at AFA Today.
And we welcome you to the New York studios of AFA Today. If you're watching on the AFA channel, a live shot up Fifth Avenue right outside the AFA Today studios. We're glad you're with us. Kevin McCullough, glad to be with you. Fighting a bit of that allergy stuff that is in the air. So if I do a lot of that today, you'll understand why. And it's really turning into quite an interesting news day today. On the faith side of things, a very historic moment has occurred, and that is that Chuck Smith, who was the founder of the Calvary Chapel churches across the country, actually started the first one, is dead today. He passed away after battling cancer for some time, and It is hard to quite get your grasp around how greatly Chuck Smith impacted evangelicalism in America. But some people say that he was they say that he impacted Protestantism in America in ways that only few have. And that's very true. People like Raul Reese and Greg Laurie and others that have gone on to huge nationwide acclaim all came from the Calvary Chapel movement. And he had a vision that he wanted to help churches achieve that were kind of based around the following. One was a deep passion for evangelism, where churches focused on reaching the lost and not just shuffling the sheep, so to speak. That was a significant aspect of what Chuck Smith's vision for Calvary Chapel held. A spirit-filled movement that believed in the spiritual gifts, but they focused on worship and spirit empowerment, not just on the gifts of the signs, though they do believe and practice all of them. So maybe John MacArthur and Chuck Smith wouldn't see eye to eye on some things. They definitely were in that category. They were culturally engaged communities that wanted to reach, at first, the hippies, but then just about everyone else by bringing them into a worshiping community. Some people commonly called it the the Jesus movement, but it really was much more than that. They also believed in church planting that was birthed out of a desire to spread the gospel and reach a lost world through new churches, and that was evidenced by the fact that Chuck Smith's reach with Calvary Chapel goes from coast to coast across America. You can't go to a state, you can't really go to an urban metro area where there isn't a Calvary Chapel at some point, and not in a formal denominational sense, just in a sense of church planting. And then this is probably the most important thing that I think the Calvary Chapel movement has contributed to Protestantism, and that they believe in verse by verse preaching. It's called expositional preaching. It's still very necessary in this day and age, and I'm grateful that that Chuck Smith had that influence on so many people in so many places across the country. So there's a little bit of news for you from the world of the Christian faith and what's going on in Christianity today. But in the rest of the world where we all live and participate, there is not anything new happening in Washington, D.C., which is a little bit discouraging to some because they were hoping that after a couple of days of shutdown that the pressure would be raised and there would be enough really intense focus on all these things that something would have given by now. I think what is interesting is most of America moves on, not the tens of thousands of federal employees that have been sent home for the last couple of days, but as the rest of the country kind of moves forward, they're kind of saying, well, what's the big deal? Our lives don't seem to be all that different with the government operating or with it not operating. With the exception of one thing, I was in the car within the last hour driving around in the New York area, and I happened to catch some of Jay Sekulo's broadcast, and I don't think Jay is heard on AFR, but he is he's a committed Christian attorney that does everything that he can with the ACLJ to fight for religious freedoms, amongst other things, in the legal arena. And his son Jordan was at the World War II memorial that we discussed yesterday, and they were live on the air, and he had a telephone feed. And evidently the ACLJ has done a bit of research to find that what the government has actually done around the World War II memorial is actually illegal. What they have done to put these barricades around the World War II memorial, where no where no barricade ever existed previous to the government shutdown, and now they've brought in police. They've chained the barricades together. They've brought in police to stand around so that people do not get over the barricades and go into the World War II memorial. That they actually have no basis in law to be able to do this. The National Park Service, again, this was uncovered yesterday. They were instructed by the White House directly to go put up barricades around the World War II memorial. These honor flights of World War II veterans are still coming into the Washington, D.C. area today. A couple of more groups of veterans are supposed to go and observe the memorial and see other things in Washington, D.C. But they were instructed, the National Park Service were instructed specifically not to do that, not to allow that to happen. Now, you have to understand, the rest of the time, this memorial is an open-air memorial. You could walk up through it, go through it anytime, day or night, never be stopped, harassed, singled out, anything. It's just open to the public 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. There's no staff that's required to keep it open. It is simply there for people to come and to pay their respects to. But for some reason, for some weird, strange reason that seems hard to explain, the administration has decided to put up barricades around it in a way that they were never put around before. And in doing so, they've now put chains on the barricades because they figured out, people figured out, well, if you just move the barricade, you can still get in. But the ACLJ went and read the actual law, the actual federal statute that governs the use of the parks. The National Park Service tried to push back and say, well, you're creating a demonstration or a speech or a protest of some sort. Now, remember what these groups of people are. They are groups of people that have been brought into the nation's capital and specifically to the World War II memorial, not for a protest and not for some sort of march and not for anything else. They're there to see the memorial that has been named in their service. And the Park Service is saying, no, you're creating a disturbance, you're creating a protest, you're creating a speech or something else. This is not allowed. Well, they started to read the actual law. Jordan Sekulow and his friends started to read the actual law to the Park Service rangers that were there, and they began to walk away when hearing the law read aloud. Now, friends, yesterday on this broadcast, towards the end of the show, Grace called in. Was it Grace, Brent, or Josie? I think it was Grace from Michigan, and wanted to take me to task for being hyper anti-Obama in the discussion that we had yesterday about the World War II memorial. Interestingly enough, I got email that spanned the spectrum. I got a couple of people that said what she said. I got a whole bunch that said that those people are nuts and that I wasn't hard enough. And then some other people that just don't think that we should ever talk about anything other than, I don't know, whatever they think I should be talking about, which I didn't check in with them today, so I have no idea what that is. But here's my problem. And you can disagree with me. You can think that I'm serving whatever purposes you can choose to ascribe to my motives. I can't stop you from thinking that. But here's what I believe is happening. The administration is exerting power in a way that is unconstitutional. They are making claims that are false. They are spending money on police services when they have told people that there is not money to spend. Although 3 weeks ago we had the money to bomb Syria, so I'm not really sure why we're at this stage where we are now. Suddenly we don't have money to have a park that doesn't cost anything to stay open, to leave that open, but we had money somehow to drop bombs on Bashar Assad. That's I don't know. It's funny. I saw one of those images on Facebook last night. They call them GIFs. They're graphic interchange something or other. But there's usually text over a picture. It was a picture of a Capitol building, and it said something about we are in the midst of a shutdown from our ability to talk about spending money that we don't have for things that we don't need. I thought that was quite interesting. Quite very interesting. If something can be quite very anything. 888-589-8840 is my number. 888-589-8840. But basically, what is going on is we've put barricades around that. We've chained them all together. The National Park Service is manning it with people there to make sure people don't jump over the barricades. And this is in the midst of the shutdown. Friends, what other purpose is there in the government doing this other than to just be willfully belligerent? Yesterday, after the nation was focused on it for about 24 hours, if they had taken everything down and said, you know what, we're not going to get in the way of these veterans to come and be allowed to look at their... But no, they ramped up the intensity yesterday. They turned on the pressure to insist that people stay out of the memorial, knowing now full well that the World War II veterans are in the process of, there's different groups coming in every day for this season of time that they had previously scheduled, a year in advance to bring veterans in so they could see this. And I want to make one thing very clear, because someone called into the Jay Sekulow show and they were like, yeah, this ain't Obama's problem, it's Boehner. Boehner's being all the bad boy here. And I don't understand that at all. And let me. And I'm not a Republican or a Democrat, but let me explain the truth. What has happened here is that the two parties have an unreconciled situation, and that the government's out of money. Supposedly, they can't spend anymore because they don't have it. They're done. They have forced a shutdown. Both sides being equally committed to their position is what created this. Now, in the process of realizing that, there are still jobs that the two sides still have to do. And part of the executive branch's job is the running of the executive branch. And so that each department made decisions on what they were going to shut down and when and how and whatever. But the fact that the National Park Service said that it was the White House that told them to shut the World War II memorial down, and said specifically that it was the White House that told them to do this. The fact that they are being read the law, they will not even listen to the fact that they are violating the law as it was being read to them by constitutional attorneys on site, and they still haven't removed the barricades. Friends, what is going on? Is that not absolute unlawful tyranny by the ruling class? See, the National Park Guards, think about this. They're in a tough spot. They're in a situation where they're afraid to break the chain of command. And if somebody up the command has said, well, you got to shut that down, they don't know the law. They're not lawyers. They're not expected to be able to conscientiously say, but hey, boss, that breaks the law. What they're afraid of is making someone mad up the chain of command, ultimately the president. But the actions are unlawful. They are unlawful. To barricade that memorial is to enact an unlawful action. So what should be done? 888-589-8840. 888-589-8840. I'm Calvin McCullough. This is AFA Today on AFR Talk.